I guess, get our seats and start the meeting momentarily. Is it live? Okay, and we are live. So some of you may have noticed that we will be live streaming tonight's meeting. The video will be uploaded to HRM's YouTube account and will be accessible to the public. The stream will be a static live shot. PowerPoints used may be hard to see, but will be posted to halifax.ca tomorrow on the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council agenda page. So here's our call to order and land acknowledgement. Do we have quorum?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. And Councillor Kent has provided her regrets for tonight. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So I guess we'll call for the approval of the January 12th, 2023 minutes. Thank you. Second. Yep. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Okay, call for the question. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that motion is carried. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Clerk, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Chair Puri, there are no additions or deletions to the agenda.
All right.
From the clerk's office.
Members of council, any additions or deletions? All right, let's call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor? Second? Okay. And that motion has no. Yes.
If you want to change the order, Councillor Hansby, you have to do it.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm just kind of wondering in regards to the order of business. I'd like to know if we can put the variance appeal hearing ahead of the public hearings. And we have a number of people here from the Eastern Shore and I'd like to make sure they get out here at a reasonable hour and be able to travel safely. So I'd like to know if we can do that ahead of the public hearing items.
Are they going to spend money in Dartmouth while they're here?
Not the parking meters, no.
I'm fine with that.
Fine with that? Okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's call for the question of the amended order of business. Question. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion has carried. Business arising out of the minutes. Nope. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Nope. Motions of reconsideration, we have none. Motions of rescission, we have none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notices of tabled matters, none. And that brings us to our appeal hearing, variance appeal hearing. Case 24105, appeal of variance refusal, 1783 East Pepepswick Road, East Pepepswick. So thank you for joining us today for an appeal hearing. The process will start with a staff presentation and questions of clarifications from staff. Then the applicant will be given an opportunity to present. After that, I will invite any assessed owners within the notification area, that's 100 meters, to speak to the appeal. Speakers can participate for a maximum of 5 minutes. Please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to the chair. The clerk will hold up a yellow sign when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when your time is complete, the clerk will hold up a red sign. After assessed owners within the notification area have been given an opportunity to speak, I will invite anyone who has identified that they are affected by the decision differently than the general public. Okay, and we have Victoria Evans. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the public hearing for appeal of variance refusal, 1783 East Peswick Road. So this property is located in the fishing village zone in the Eastern Shore West land use bylaw area. And this is a request for 7 variances to permit an agricultural use in an existing accessory structure. So the accessory structure is a barn, and while it has been in existence for a number of years, it was not used for an agricultural use, which is a single horse, until approximately 2015. When the accessory structure began being used for an agricultural use, a development permit was not obtained at the time. In 2021, staff received a complaint about a horse located in an existing building within the required setback from potable water supplies and water courses, and within the required separation distance from neighboring dwellings. Therefore, the applicant then applied for this variance request to bring the agricultural use into conformity with the land use bylaw. So to give you some context here, we have the location of the property to the right in East Peswick, and then on the left is an aerial of the property and the immediately adjacent neighbors as well. And as part of the appeal of the variance refusal, we did a 100-meter notification to the surrounding property owners. So now I'll get into the variances requested. As I mentioned, there's 7. The additional 2 are just on the following slide. So the first is the minimum side yard setback. On the left side, the zone requirement is 50 feet, and the variance requested is 23 feet 11 inches. 2 and 3 here are the minimum setback from a water course or water body. The zone requirement is 300 feet, and then the variance requested is 131 feet 3 inches and 241 feet 1 inch. 4 and 5 here are the minimum setback from residential dwellings. So these are the immediately adjacent neighbors. So this is 1769 East Peswick Road and 1787. The requirement is again 300 feet, and then the variance requested is 193 feet 7 inches and 177 feet 2 inches. And then the last 2 variances here, these are the same neighboring properties, but in this case, it's their potable water supplies. The zone requirement is 300 feet, and then the variance requested is 196 feet 10 inches and 221 feet 9 inches. And then here is a site plan showing each of the variances. So you can see to the left there, that's the watercourse setback on Peswick Inlet, and then there's another stream to the south, and then we have the left side yard setback and the 2 variances for the neighboring dwellings and then their water supplies as well. So in consideration of the proposal, we look to the Halifax Charter, which provides us with 3 circumstances where a variance may not be granted. So the first is if the variance violates the intent of the land use bylaw. The second is if the difficulty experienced is general to properties in the area. And then the third is if the difficulty experienced results from an intentional disregard for the requirements of the land use bylaw. So I'll take you through each of these 3 circumstances and how they apply to this variance proposal. So the first is, does the proposal violate the intent of the land use bylaw? So the land use bylaw requirements include a minimum 50-foot setback from side lot lines and a minimum 300-foot setback from residential dwellings, potable water supplies, and water courses. The purpose of these setbacks is to carry out the intent of the municipal planning strategy policy to allow agricultural uses while creating restrictions that consider the environment, human health, and potential impact and compatibility with the neighboring properties. In this circumstance as well, there are 7 variance requests, and some of them are very large reductions from the requirements. So therefore, it is the development officer's opinion that this proposal violates the intent of the land use bylaw to provide separation of agricultural uses from residential uses, water courses, and potable water supplies. The second circumstance is if the difficulty experienced is general to properties in the area. In this area, we found that there's a real mix of lot types. So there's some smaller lots that would not be capable of meeting the setback requirements. And then there's also some larger lots that could easily meet the setback requirements for an agricultural use. So given this variety of lot sizes and configurations, the difficulty experienced is not general to properties in the area, and this did not inform the refusal of the variance request. And then lastly, is the difficulty experienced the result of an intentional disregard for the requirements of the land use bylaw. As I mentioned earlier, the use did begin on the property without a development permit in 2015 when the property owner adopted the horse. However, the applicant has stated that he was unaware of the land use bylaw requirements as it pertains to agricultural uses. And since being made aware of those requirements, the applicant has put forth this variance application to bring the use into conformity with the land use bylaw. So therefore, intentional disregard of the land use bylaw requirements did not inform the refusal of the variance request. So in reviewing these different circumstances, it was the violation of the intent of the land use bylaw that led to the refusal of the proposed variance. So in conclusion, council has two alternatives. So council may overturn the decision of the development officer and allow the appeal, resulting in the approval of the variance, or council may uphold the development officer's decision and deny the appeal, resulting in the refusal of the variance, and this is the recommended alternative.
All right, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Victoria. I think, how do you pronounce that? I was saying
I
it
was
wrong.
saying Peswick, but
And I was saying Pepeswick. What? Pepeswick. That's a toughie. Okay. Do we have any questions of clarification?
Just one.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Victoria. It's my understanding that this file came to light on an unsightly complaint first, that the property owner had a complaint about unsightliness of the property and stuff around the property, and that was the initial visit by a bylaw officer. Is that not correct?
through you, Madam Chair, I believe it was specifically to the setback requirements for an agricultural use, to the best of my knowledge. Oh.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Mancini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Victoria, thank you for your presentation. So I understand by the rules that you're looking to follow. I'm trying to understand if allowing this to stay, what is the negative impact to the surrounding property, if any? Is there a health issue? What is the concern?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, with the agricultural uses, the intent of, or the requirements for agricultural uses, the intent of them is really to protect human health. So that's why there's such a large requirement from water courses and the potable water supplies.
But has there been any identification of that from a negative perspective right now? Has there been any problems with the water source or anything of that sort?
We haven't received any assessments of the water quality, but I'm not aware of any issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, the way agricultural use is defined in the land use bylaw, is it like specific to like what type of animals you have? Because there's obviously a vast difference between a huge farm and a single horse.
Through you, Madam Chair, I have the definition of agricultural use. So it means the use of land and buildings for the production of food, water, fiber, or flora, or the breeding and handling of animals, and includes retail or market outlets for the sale of perishable agricultural goods, but shall not include any operation that involves more than 50 domestic fowl and 10 of any other type of livestock. So in this case, it would be the handling of animals, and it would fall into the 10 of any other type of livestock.
Okay, thank you. These always seem to be differently defined in, I think, every one of our plans.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. So now the Robin Clayton, if you would like to, this is your opportunity to speak, if you would like to, and the microphone is right over there. Or here, wherever you would like to go,
or you can go.
so we can all hear you.
Lights green?
No. Oh, yeah, it's on now. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Clayton, you have 5 minutes, and at your 30-second to finish mark, our clerk will hold up the yellow paper to let you know. Okay? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Robin Clayton. I live at 1783 East Pepeswick Road with my horse Angel. I'm appealing the decision to deny my variance application. The development officer did not permit the variance on the opinion that it did not meet the intent of the bylaw. This leads to the question, which was not addressed in his letter: what is the intent of the bylaw? The intent of this bylaw is to ensure adequate separation from neighboring wells, watercourses, etc., to avoid any undue contamination. The setbacks in the bylaw cannot be the underlying intent of the bylaw. The prevention of undue contamination is the intent. Not all locations will require the same setback distances in order to avoid undue contamination. Such has been the case here. There is no evidence of any undue contamination to any neighboring wells or watercourses, and Angel and her little barn has been at the property over 7 years. As stated in the initial application, since the stated bylaw distances can't be met due to the dimensions of the property, additional measures have been taken to avoid any possible undue contamination, including the removal of manure on a regular basis and having it stored in a covered trailer prior to removal. No abutting neighbor has any complaints. In fact, they have provided supporting letters for the appeal. The development officer has made a decision based on his feelings and not on objective reasoning. Looking at this objectively can only lead to the conclusion that there are no signs and evidence of any undue contamination. There are no concerns from any direct neighbor, and I'm taking every measure possible to continue to prevent any undue contamination. The very intent of the bylaw is being met, and for that reason, the appeal should be granted. Thank you.
Thank
Can I
you,
go?
Mr. Clayton. Are there any questions of clarification? Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you, Robin. When I came out and met you on site, could you tell me and clarify in regards to the first complaint? Was it about unsightly matters of the property, the things you kept on the property? Was that the first
What?
visit of the bylaw officer?
I believe that's why the officers from HRM were there first, because they had an unsightly premises complaint against my property. Yes.
Okay. Also, could you describe the topography of your property? The horse in the corral area is down at the bottom part of the property. These dug wells are within so many feet, are uphill away from the area. So anything that runs off your property runs down into the ditch and and across the street into the saltwater inlet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So, all right, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Austin. Oh, no? Okay. Your mic is on. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Mansky.
I'm good.
Oh, no. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Clayton. So now it's time for any of the assessed owners within the notification area who would like to speak to the appeal. Do I have to call 3 times for that?
No.
No. Is there a sign-up sheet?
Yeah, I have a sign-up sheet.
Okay, wonderful. So is the sign-up sheet?
Yes, I believe they're the interested parties that would like to speak.
Okay. So we have Mant, Montgomery?
I think it's Merritt.
Merritt, sorry. Thank you. Come on up, and Jennifer Oakes. Wonderful. Which either one? Okay, wonderful. So if you could kindly state your name and your community, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay, I'm Merritt Montgomery Nixon, and I've lived in Muscatawbet Harbour for 43 years. I'm here to show my support for the changes to the bylaw for Robin and Angel. My mother and I have both owned horses in the community, and I still continue to. The research done on horses and the effect of having a relationship with one speaks volumes. Animals make our lives better. Most people do not have the funds, time, or knowledge to have a horse or any large animal. However, Robin allows his community to stop and have his visit with Angel, which for some people is the only interaction with a horse they have ever had. And many community members rely on their visits with Angel as a mental health break from the world. This horse is not only important to Robin, but she is important to our community as a whole. Horse owners take their jobs very seriously. It's a 365-day-a-year job that's hard work and very costly. Robin takes great care of Angel, providing her with a safe environment, lots of enrichment from inside the community. She's fed properly, has a dry, safe barn, and is vetted. Robin is very willing to make the changes required to keep her, but HRM should be willing to work with him. The fact that the whole area is still considered a fishing community is wrong for HRM. Yes, we have fishermen, but most of the people who live on East Peswick are not fishermen. I understand that all the requirements are not met, but with a letter from both Robin's neighbors supporting Angel and Robin, that should tip the scales in Angel's direction. Water issues are not applicable as not one person has complained, nor have there been any issues put forward. HRM should have to prove it is a water concern with the amount of contaminated water sources from natural ground minerals such as iron, arsenic, and a horse should be the least of anyone's worries. Not to mention all the old grandfather septic systems with wastewater that is being pumped God knows where. And let's take a look at all the fishing boats spewing diesel going up and down our harbor every day for months at a time. But all of that's okay. One horse could not possibly do any more damage to the environment than what's already being done, especially since Robin is removing all of the organic waste from the horse off the location, off the property. Her waste is then being used as organic fertilizer. Horse manure is highly valuable to farmers because of the composting components. It's supercharged and also increases soil fertility, regeneration, and high quality yields. Some will argue that horse manure over time will leach into wells and waterways, but given that the manure is not stockpiled on Robin's property or given the opportunity to break down, this is not a factor. Nothing Robin did was intentional to go against HRM bylaws. We live in a rural area where many community members have horses, livestock, poultry farms, etc. So why would he think otherwise when he was given the opportunity to save a horse from a meat truck? He has given her the love and respect that she deserved for the last 8 years and an opportunity to be a horse and have people respect and love her. Why did it take 8 years for someone to make a fuss? Are we going to spend more money, time, and resources to check all the rural properties in HRM to ensure that bylaws are met on every single person that louses livestock? HRM spans a good chunk of the eastern side of our province, and with all communities within have very different uses and needs, and yet their bylaws HRM bylaws are all applicable to all of our communities. The rules or regulations in each community should be different. Every time he has tried to accommodate your rules, he's slapped with another violation instead of HRM helping him. As per HRM correspondences with Robin, it has been noted that no cost to HRM has been accrued to this other than the officer's time, and no significant risks have been noted, such as environmental factors. So what's the problem? We have an animal that under bylaw A700 meets all criteria and she's kept well uncontaminated. Please realize what a horse means to our entire community, and in a world that has little joy, she brings joy daily. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And Jennifer Oakes, go ahead. You also have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm actually speaking on behalf of my 6-year-old child today, from the eyes of a dedicated 6-year-old horse owner. Mummy, why can't Robin keep Angel at his house? Where will she go? Robin saved her. This isn't fair. Robin loves to visit, everyone loves to visit her. He takes such good care of her, and she's happy. She will be scared to leave her home after the life that she had before. This is a very, very small snapshot of the comments my daughter, who is 6 years old, has made over the last little while. She is a very dedicated, horse-crazy little girl who owns her own pony within our community. She is extremely intuitive to horse and human relationships and horse behaviors. You could call her a natural horsewoman. When it comes to horses, she knows her stuff and genuinely feels them in her soul. I have had to try to explain to her why Angel may have to leave, and although very hard to do so, because it seems every time we turn around, there's a different reason or a new bylaw that is all of a sudden in violation. But Mummy, Angel has lived here longer than I am old. Do you know what else her responses have been? But there are horses everywhere out here, all kinds of other animals. Are the bylaw people going to take everyone's animals away from them? Make everyone give up something that they love? Don't they know, Mommy, that our animals are like family and it's really not just that simple to move a horse? Angel has a home right here with Robin where she is safe, loved, and cared for. Don't they know that Angel relies on Robin to keep her safe? So now I am left with a scared little girl who is worried that someone is going to come to take her horses away from her. And I really have no way to reassure her that this is not the case, because every day it seems like there is a new reason why she can't stay. Is it the property lines? Is it the wells? Is it the ocean? What actually is it? My daughter wakes up scared at night, telling me a man came to her barn in her dream and made her give her pony away because the barn was ugly. As a family within the community who owns horses, we are faced with unnecessary worry from our young child, and this isn't fair. My daughter is right in her statement. You can't just move a horse anywhere. Horses are very expensive animals to keep. They need room to roam, they need shelter, they need fencing, they need human connection, all of the very things that Angel receives from her home with Robin. And back to her other statement, Robin saved her. She's also right. Angel was bound for a meat factory when Robin stepped in to save her, but in a roundabout way, Angel in fact saved Robin. Robin is a retired man who lives and breathes for this horse. The relationship they have built learning to trust one another is also a huge deal for a once scared animal who had no future. Robin has given her the life every animal deserves, and it's potentially going to be stripped away from both of them, all over what? Where will she go? Who will care for her? Who will care for her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the way Robin does? And who will greet all the members of the community while they drive down the road? Angel hasn't just helped Robin enjoy his retired life. She helps many community members who are unable to leave their homes for various reasons. When the community members can look out their windows and see Robin and Angel going for a stroll, many of them will come to greet them, mostly to have a snuggle with Angel and give her a scratch. For a lot of community members, this is the one thing within the community that actually brings them joy. Mommy, they need to know that this isn't fair. Coming from a tear-filled, worried 6-year-old child trying to make sense of something that does not make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is an opportunity for anyone else who would like to speak to this from the community.
Or an interested party.
And explain why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so call for the second time. Anyone else would like to speak? Okay, absolutely. So I see we have two people coming forward. Excellent. So if you could state your name and why this affects you or how this affects you, and you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Jessica Corrigan, and this affects me because I own 1909 East Pepeswick Road, which is an existing undersized lot. So I am here today to provide support for Robin and his horse Angel, who are our neighbors in East Pepeswick. When not in East Pepeswick, our home is in downtown Dartmouth. Even though it's only 35 minutes from Dartmouth, East Pepeswick truly is a rural fishing village and is zoned as such, with a rich homesteading and farming history. It is a small community of generous and kind people, and Robin is no exception. Robin rescued his horse Angel, as he would proudly tell you, a purebred walker some years ago. They are best friends, and she is incredibly well taken care of. It is weird to drive down the road on the way to Martinique Beach and not see them together, greeting neighbors, stopping so tourists can pet her head through their cars, and enjoying each other's company. It is clearly evident how much Robin and Angel are loved by the public based on the outcry you see here today. From our understanding of this issue around Angel's location, the bylaws in question are written with the intent of protecting neighbors' interests. Robin has demonstrated that not only the close neighbors, but the far ones are here to support him today. It is also clear that the broader community agrees with them. There are Keep Angel Home signs on almost every driveway from Musquodoboit Harbour to Martinique Beach. So many that the person offering to make the signs ran out. There are, as of January 31st, 7,690 signatures and climbing on a petition on change.org. I'm sure there are more as I speak to you today. Local residents in the area feel this issue demonstrates that the city is out of touch with rural communities and their way of life. Everyone I have talked to from the city goes to Martinique. They look forward to seeing Angel on their way, and they are devastated. Most importantly, as a friend, I am concerned for Robin, who after losing his wife has found a best friend and partner in Angel. Please find the compassion to see that this issue is simple to resolve, but has the potential to really negatively impact someone's life. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. All right, go ahead. If you could state your name and your community and how this affects you. Thank you.
Gray, San Antonio, Jane and Deluisi. My name is Shannon Monk. I live at 1601 East Pepeswick. A lot of my neighbors here might not even realize who I am, but I'm the lady that walks by Angel every morning. So I go for a walk about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I pass Robin's about maybe around 20 after, kind of depends on my day. And I always have my morning commune with Angel. And it's just, as we've heard from some of the speakers, it's that sense of community and that sense of connection. And I think it's really important to bring community to these meetings. We sometimes get lost in bureaucracy. And I really hold up Robin for his commitment to his precious horse. I see him there every morning taking care of her, and I see him every day walking her. And I just feel like I wanted to bring the voice of the silent people that you may not engage with and hang out with on a daily basis, but we're impacted too. Miigwech Walalan.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Anyone else who would like to speak? And one more time, anyone else who would like to speak, you are welcome.
Motion to close. Variance hearing.
Mr. Clayton has an opportunity to respond if he would like. I can't say anything. Okay,
Motion to close the hearing.
all right. Motion. Okay, hearing is closed. What are the wishes of council?
Madam Chair, as the local councilor for the area, I'll put the motion on the floor, and in the procedural process, we put the motion on the affirmative that the appeal be allowed. I'd like to speak to that as well.
Sure.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who's turned out tonight in regards to showing Mr. Clayton the support he has in the community, and I'm sure it's heartfelt. And I also want to thank the speakers who spoke, and also I want to acknowledge the correspondence that's been received, especially by the two abutting neighbors, that they also support the request here today. There's a lot of comments made on social media about how hard-handed HRM has been in this whole process. This is not HRM coming down on a hammer. This is just HRM applying the local rules that were adopted by the community over 30 years ago. The local municipal planning strategy was developed by the community for the community, and it was back in the days of the county. So this has been a bylaw and rules that have been passed down and still being administered by the municipality. And this shows that how some of our old municipal planning strategies are out to date and out of touch. So therefore, we have to look at sometimes harmonizing them, bring them up to modern day standards and modern day practicality. Also talk about the odd configuration of a lot of the lots. You saw that in the diagram, that some of these lots are very narrow, that you won't be able to fully apply the variances or the setbacks that's required by the land use bylaws. So it becomes harder to practical to utilize those things. But also want to note in regards to the property itself, walk the property with Mr. Clayton. He keeps it very tidy in regards to the horse area and stuff. I asked about the manure management and how he keeps it at bay. make sure that doesn't accumulate and doesn't have any chance for runoff and stuff. As also pointed out, the wells are further uphill and away from the any potential runoff areas, as well as the runoff, if any does occur, ends up in salt water in the ocean. It's not into a freshwater course at all. And so in regards to the online petition on change.org, I Ride with Robin, a few minutes ago, it was 8,080 names on that list. So I just want to make sure to note that for the record. There's also been a lot of correspondence received as well. I'd like to thank those who've written letters to have on the record for the clerk. And I'm proud to say there's a lot of guardian angels looking out for Angel tonight. And I want to say that I am here in support of the appeal.
Seconder, okay, wonderful. Any other? Yep, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've got a couple of questions, procedural questions, maybe I'm looking at our solicitor. Any decision made tonight, is it appealable in any way?
I believe it can be appealed to the Utility Review Board.
Right, okay. And the second question is, since we're down a councillor here tonight, if the vote, regardless of which way, is a tie, what happens?
A tie is a denial of the variance.
A tie is
So it has to be an affirmative vote to pass the variance.
Okay, thank you for that. You know, go ahead.
If I may, Madam Chair, under the HRM Charter, Community Council's decision is the appeal of the Development Officer's decision. So there would be no further appeals. Community Council's decision would be final unless there's any kind of judicial review or anything that Mr. Judah would like to speak to, but thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. You know, there are a lot of reference to, and I think Councillor Hensby stated well about municipality being heavy-handed. I mean, the municipality and the bylaw officers are simply doing their job. They have a set of rules they go by and they investigate it and they try to take the the emotional piece out of it, and they're just following the rules. They had a criteria that Victoria walked us through that they followed, and based on that criteria, they made their decision. However, we heard tonight from Mr. Clayton and from his neighbors. And Mr. Clayton, you're pretty fortunate to have some amazing neighbors that care about you and love Angel. That's pretty cool that you live in that kind of environment, man. So good for you. When we look at these types of things, personally, I like to look at it from 30,000 feet in the air and looking down. What are the rules that we're going by? But what else impacts the situation? There is no impact on the water as we see right now. There was the issue of the property, and I understand through the councillor that the property has been cleaned up. And I see nothing but support for from the neighbors. So thanks very much. I'll be supporting the appeal.
Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. And, I'm reminded of my own childhood out on the Eastern Shore. My folks, we had chickens, but we almost had a bunch of goats too. That never came to pass, but it was a near run thing. So, I mean, the life in the country is very much a mixed use experience. Just that definition of the bylaw, I mean, I feel like there's, Councillor Hensby's already mentioned that the bylaw is old. In the core, here in the core of the city, we've come to, we're not into large animals, but we have started to define different kind of levels of agriculture, like the small scale use versus the large use. And this sounds like a bylaw that's very much written with a kind of a one size fits all for the large farm, where you're going to most definitely have some very considerable water quality issues versus a single horse on a small lot that's more companion than farm use. I'm just wondering, just one question for staff. If we allow the appeal tonight, is it specific to this, not Robin the horse, but specific to this scale? Or are we basically then okaying any agricultural use on this property?
Through you, Madam Chair. So it would be for any agricultural use on the property, not just a single horse. So as I mentioned earlier, with the definition of agricultural use, as long as it met that definition.
Okay. I just want to be certain of exactly what it is that I might be allowing and that everyone understands what could be then permitted. I don't think it's a real risk in this. It's a small lot that's somebody's house, and someday I don't see it as a likely outcome. But for me, what it comes down to when I look at these variants, I would echo Councillor Mancini. I think our staff, yourself and our bylaw officers, they're doing the job. And we're doing our job too, which is at times to insert a bit of the human heart into things. And I will be voting to allow the appeal as well. For me, what it really comes down to is the two neighbors who would be most affected are in support, and it's down at the bottom of the hill. So, I don't think it's likely we're going to face any water quality issues from this. So I will support the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. So, shall we call for the question? Let's be clear.
Madam Chair, let's be
That's
really
right.
clear, because this is not
That's right.
typical. So I wonder, Josh, you could go through it and what we're voting on right now, and go ahead.
The motion is to grant the variance. So
So-
a positive vote
Positive.
grants the variance.
So if you're in support of the appeal, we're saying yay. If you're against,
Yay
we're saying
saves the
nay.
horse.
Right.
So yay, save Angel. All right, all in favor of the appeal by Mr. Clayton? Aye. And motion has passed. I know, we're really not supposed to applaud, but even I did there, so. Oh, sometimes you got to break the rules a little. Congratulations, Mr. Clayton. and
Madam Chair, if I may,
Angel.
just for a moment,
Yes,
I want
you
to thank.
may.
I want to thank the community for coming out tonight, coming in from Muscatobit Harbour. It's a cold night, and I hope a safe drive home. You're more than welcome to stick around and listen to the other stuff tonight. In regards to Shannon Park or Burnside, so have yourself a pleasant evening.
Yeah, we can take a few minutes, little break here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, definitely. And then, yeah, we're all so off. But I know it's really hard.
All right. Break is over. What's that? Andrea. Andrea's right there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to resume. We are starting back again with a public hearing. Case 24230, amending development agreement for Harbour Isle and Marketplace Drive, Dartmouth. So thank you for joining us today for a public hearing. The process will start with a staff presentation and questions of clarification from staff, and then the applicant will be given an opportunity to present. After that, we will go to the public hearing. Speakers can participate for a maximum of 5 minutes. Please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to the chair. The clerk will hold up a yellow sign when you have 30 seconds remaining, and when your time is complete, the clerk will hold up a red sign. After everyone on the list has been given an opportunity to speak, I will call 3 times to see if there are any additional speakers. Clerk, can you confirm if there's been any additional correspondence added?
Yes, Madam Chair, there's been no correspondence received for this item.
Okay. So I think we have Megan Mund to present for us this evening. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Megan Mond, and I'm a planner with HRM's Urban Enabled Applications Group. And tonight I am here to present for the public hearing of case 24230, which is an application to amend the existing development agreement for Harbour Isle. So the applicant is Michael Napier Architecture, and they have applied on behalf of the property owners to make changes to the development agreement, to make substantive changes to the existing development agreement. Harbour Isle is a site that is located between Marketplace Drive and the Halifax Harbour in Dartmouth. And the changes that they are asking to make relate to population density, to increase that, changing the proposed office building and hotel to apartment buildings, allowing the proposed restaurant to be used as a variety of commercial uses, and amendments to some of the built form requirements. So as I mentioned, the property is located in Dartmouth off of Marketplace Drive. So generally speaking, it's just below Burnside off of Windmill Road, close to the Halifax Harbour. So the image on the right shows the general boundaries of the site. And so to the south, you can see that there's some industrial use, the Seamaster Services Limited, and then to the north of the site is the Dartmouth Yacht Club. So along this stretch of Windmill Road, there is some small scale commercial development. And then there is one residential development just to the north of the Dartmouth Yacht Club. So this is the site that has been built out so far. So this would be the view from Sea Point Road looking towards the Halifax Harbour. The building on the left-hand side would be the Phase 1 building, and the 2 buildings on the right are part of Phase 2, which will have more meaning in a map that I'll show you shortly. So this is the site from the corner of Marketplace Drive and Wheelhouse Road. And you can see Halifax Harbour just in the distance there. So this is the area that the amendments would generally apply to. So that hasn't been built out yet. So in HRM, there are 3 levels of planning documents. The highest level is the regional plan, and it guides where population growth and investment of services like transit, piped water, and sewer should occur. The second level is the community plans, and they focus on a specific geographic area and outline how and where different types of development may occur. So often planning applications that require council approval are enabled through the community plans. The third level and most detailed planning document is the land use bylaw, and the land use bylaw identifies zoning of the lands and specifies the regulations for developing a property. And any development that can meet the land use bylaw regulations can happen without council approval and without public engagement. So the site is serviced with sewer, municipal sewer and water. The northern half is zoned R3 and the southern half is zoned I2. So the R3 zone permits a variety of residential uses, but apartment development would have to go through development agreements. And then the I2 zone permits a variety of industrial and commercial uses. The site is designated harbor-related commercial residential under the Rights Cove secondary planning strategy within the Dartmouth Municipal Planning Strategy. So this designation envisions commercial businesses that can take advantage of the harbor and residential development. The existing agreement that is already in place allows 6 apartment buildings and 3 commercial buildings. And the 3 apartment buildings with ground floor commercial have already been built that you saw in the pictures earlier. And then, of course, the rest of the lands are vacant. The policy that enables this development is WC4, which I'll get into in more detail shortly. So this is the process for the application to substantively amend a development agreement. So staff completed a detailed review of the proposal, engaged the public, and wrote the recommendation report. Following the public hearing, council will have to make a decision to approve or refuse the application, and any decision that you make can be appealed. If the proposal is approved and no appeals are filed, then the amendments to the agreement can take effect and permits can be applied for. So I will quickly run through the proposed changes to the agreement. So in phases 3 to 5, it's to increase the allowable dwelling units from 105 units in each phase to 170 units in each phase. It's to exempt phase 5 from the setbacks from the watercourse trail easement because it is not actually adjacent to. It was a temporary trail that they had coming down there. In phase 6, to change the permitted use from a 9,290 square foot square meter office building to a 172 unit residential building. In phase 7, to change the permitted use from a hotel with a maximum of 175 rooms to an apartment building with 175 rooms. And then in phase 8, to allow the restaurant to be used as a restaurant or any other permitted commercial use to give them more flexibility. So there are also a number of built form changes that they've asked for to increase the flexibility of the design of the buildings moving forward. So increasing the maximum street wall from 4 meters to 4.5 meters to allow a flexibility in the street wall height. So rather than exactly 11 meters, it would be 8 to 11 meters. Allowing the street wall height to be exceeded 1.5 meters for clear railing systems and parapets. Allowing up to 35% of the street wall height to be reduced to not less than 3.5 meters, rather than 20% of the street wall height can exceed 11 meters. Allowing the building in phase 5 to have a minimum street wall step back of 2.5 meters rather than 3 meters from Marketplace Drive. And revising the definition of building depth and allowing any portion of the building exempt from street wall step backs to be excluded from the building depth measurement. So the enabling policy is WC4, and this states that the harbor-related commercial residential subdesignation, in that designation, harbor-related commercial uses, institutional uses, offices, hotels, townhouses, apartment buildings, restaurants, and public and private recreation uses may be considered subject to approval of a development agreement. And matters to be considered in the agreement include the maximum building height of 16 stories, measures to mitigate noise, a publicly accessible waterfront trail, and mitigation measures for coastal flooding and storm surges, among other things. It also does reference policy IP1C and IP5, and those are general policies relating to what development agreement should cover, including that the proposal is compatible and consistent with adjacent uses and the existing development form, and that there are controls on the use density, phasing, pedestrian movement, and traffic generation. So the level of engagement completed was a consultation. And so we had the website where we sought feedback and comments from the public, signage posted on the site, and a mail out notification inviting feedback. We heard from 3 members of the public, and one of them provided feedback. They were opposed to more development, residential development in lieu of commercial development. And we mailed 79 postcards out. So that's what we heard from the three. And then between May 6, 2022 and January 25th, 2023, we had a total of 301 views on the webpage, and 221 of those were unique. So in summary, the application is to increase the allowable dwelling units between phases 3 and 5, to permit the multi-unit dwelling in phases 6, permit multi-unit dwellings in phases 6 and 7 instead of an office building and a hotel, allowing a range of commercial uses in phase 8, updating 3 schedules to reflect the text changes, and then changes to some of the built form requirements, which relate to street wall setbacks, street wall height, street wall step backs, and building depth. So staff recommend that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council approve the proposed amending development agreement as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated December 9th, 2022. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Do we have any questions of clarification? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Means.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. I just have one question. Is there any opportunity for affordable housing and density bonusing in these projects?
So through you, Madam Chair, to the councillors. So this application, they didn't ask for that. So it wasn't amending. This is an amendment to an existing development agreement. And so the existing development agreement in its totality would exist as is, with the exception of the amendments that they are asking for if approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is it fair to say the switch from the hotel and the office building to residential would be taking things to a less intensive use than the commercial use? I'm thinking like traffic and that sort of trip generation, that sort of thing.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. So I think in some ways it would have a different traffic pattern. So the intensity may be more in the morning and the evenings when you see that rush hour traffic with residential, but commercial it may be throughout the day. But in terms of sewer and water capacities and that sort of thing, that's not something that I can answer in terms of what's going to produce more. It would depend on the type of commercial use. Probably a hotel would produce more than office, but residential potentially more. And that's something that will be looked through at the permitting stage.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we will now open the public hearing, and I will invite the applicant, Michael Napier Architecture, to provide the presentation. You are welcome to come to the front. And nope, okay. Excellent. Welcome, Mr. Napier. You have 10 minutes, sir, to present your presentation, and our clerk will show her yellow sign when you have 30 seconds left. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Chair and councillors, and thank you, Megan, for running through that. I've done a fair number of these in my day, and I've never had a tougher act to follow than Angel. Well, it's almost, I'm a sub here, actually. My name is Michael Napier. Michael Schrafel and my team has been ushering this through the process for the last year or so. Unfortunately, Michael had a skiing accident the other day, and so he's unable to attend. So I'm going to have to try and fill in the gaps. So if I'm a little rusty in a few things, just give me a break like you did with Angel, okay? Okay. So we were retained to design a residential building in phase 5. We had nothing to do with the initial phases of the development. So we sort of came in with a clean slate and looked at this, and the first 2 phases, 1 and 2, weren't under the same DA restrictions as the further phases. And so when we looked at the phase 5, that DA puts phases 3 to 5 together with a total of 308 allowable units over 3 buildings. So that's approximately 103, 104 units for each. All those buildings were allowed to be 16 stories in height. The DA required the street wall height of 11 meters throughout. There was no variation really allowed in the street wall height. These, as you saw from the map, they're all on big blocks. They've got 4 streets around them on all sides. So that street wall requirement was required on all 4 sides of the building. It's not like downtown Dartmouth or downtown Halifax, where if you have a street wall on one side of your building, you've got 3 sides that it's not, pertinent on. So when we looked at this, we ended up with a very large podium. And basically that podium was capable of housing approximately 2/3 of the units that we would have been allowed to put in that whole development. And so if you have 100 units approximately, and you take 2/3 of that and you put 60 units down below and you put 40 units above, and you have a allowable footprint of 880 square meters to put that in the tower, well, we only end up with 5 stories. So we ended up with an 8-story building, which seemed kind of defeating the purpose of living in a place like that with the views and everything else, to put all the units down low, create a high street wall around all the streets. And it really seemed more like a downtown solution, more like a center plan, downtown Halifax type thing. So we looked at what would happen if you took the allowable podium and put the allowable tower on top of it, and how many units you could come up with. And that's where the 175 units came from. It's the same volume, the same height, but the potential is there within the existing DA to put 175 units. It's just that we're not allowed to put 175 units because we could do one building with 175 units and not build perhaps another 2 buildings and just build one other and come up to 308. But it seemed that with the volume that we had there and the height, it seemed to be squandering an opportunity to put more density when we're all looking at finding more housing. So So as I said, we end up with basically the same volume, the same height, with more units within the present DA framework, but we do need to get around some of the density issues. The actual things that we're looking for in the built form are really to just give some variation to the street wall so that we don't have an 11-meter wall all around it. We're trying to open it up more, potentially create courtyards within that look out towards the harbor to get more units in the lower podium, because the podium is so big that if you built the whole thing out, the interior would just be, there wouldn't be any windows or anything like that. It's quite a wide site. So besides putting some parking there on the lower levels, on the upper levels, it would be really waste space. So we considered putting courtyards with housing looking into those courtyards and having views out to the ocean. And that's where we're looking at reducing the height of the street wall so that those people can actually see out through that area. So basically, there are commercial and office opportunities within Harbour Isle on the other side of Marketplace Road. The hotel and office that was, envisioned years ago when this, as you probably are aware, this DA has gone through numerous revisions and different owners over the years. And when looking at the actual area, it was felt that the need was more for housing than for a hotel in that area. So we're just looking at even Steven swapping as far as servicing and things like that. The loads on the sewer system and everything are similar. The office would actually be less, or would be more, I'm sorry, than the residential if you substituted that out. So we feel that these street wall revisions, will definitely create a much nicer street environment because of the variation that will be allowed. And, it's a great location. It's strategically located. We've got a burgeoning industrial park bursting at the seams beside it with people looking for places to live. And there's wonderful transit connections with Metro Transit just across the street. So with the need for housing in HRM, this is really, I think, a win-win situation for everybody. So thank you very much. If there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of clarification? Go ahead, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael, thanks very much for the presentation. I have no questions about the amendments. I do have a question about the units. Are there any accessible units being proposed?
Well, the building code in Nova Scotia now has two avenues that you can go. You can go with barrier-free units, which is 1 in 20, which is what it has been for the last 20 years or
Right.
so, or the new code allows for all units to be accessible. And so that allows for wider doors, lower light switches,
Right.
things that are more universal design for people to suit all sorts of different needs. You have to put backing in behind in the bathrooms so that if someone did want a grab bar in the future,
Right.
you could. So most people now are going that route versus the barrier-free ones, which
And that's what the owners are doing with this property?
well, that's what the plan
I
is.
understand.
That's what it is. So basically, you'd have 175 universal units versus 4 or 8
Fully
barrier-free.
accessible. Yeah.
Something like that.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Now we move to the speakers list. And do we have a speakers list for this one?
I will check, but I don't think there's
Oh,
anyone signed up.
no, okay. Okay, if there is no one signed up, I will call for. No one signed up? Okay, if anyone would like to speak to this, you are welcome to speak. If anyone would like to speak to this, anyone in the gallery like to speak to this? And one more time, anyone with that burning feeling to speak? No? Okay, let's close the public hearing. I need a seconder to, yep, go ahead. Thank you, Councillor Austin. Okay, what is your wish?
Madam Chair, I'll put the motion on the floor. Put the following motion on the floor that the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council 1 approve the proposed amending development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A, the staff report, December 9th, 2022. And 2, require the agreement be signed by the property owner with 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council and request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies that's necessary, including applicable appeal periods, which is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and the obligations arising hereunder shall be at the end. So moved. Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we start, this public hearing is about a property in Dartmouth North. The next public hearing is about another property in Dartmouth North. MLA for the area, Susan LeBlanc, is here representing Dartmouth North. So welcome, Susan. So interesting, we're looking at the ask here is to increase some density. I think from 105 dwelling units to 170 units. It's a phased-in project over 3 years maybe before we get started, 15 years to finish. So it's a lot of work going on here by the time we actually have it full. you're looking at, when we do these public hearings, very often when we do development, there are neighboring communities that are maybe much older, and very often we hear concerns about, especially with tall buildings, shadowing and wind and traffic, and none of that's happened. And if I can think of a better place for density as this one, and the next application we're going to be discussing tonight. So the density is welcomed here for sure. I will mention, I think the applicant did allude to transit. In this area, there will be a new transit terminal that'll be built. It's a little behind now, but you're looking at construction from in 2025, 2026, with operation starting in 26, 27. In the area, there are some gaps and sidewalks and trail system, but that's all things that are underway. I have no issue with any of the amendments being asked for here at this point in time, colleagues. The proposed building, along with the amendments, are welcomed. When I speak to people that live in the existing towers now, or even the mid-rise, they love living there. And so I think this is a good project. And again, no issues with the amendment. So I'll be supporting it and asking you to support it also. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep, I'm good.
Call for the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Excellent. Motion has passed. And we are moving right along to our next public hearing, case 22734, development agreement for the former Shannon Park lands, Dartmouth. So thank you for joining us for a public hearing. The process will start with a staff presentation and questions of clarification from staff, and then the applicant will be given an opportunity to present. After that, we will go to the public hearing, and speakers can participate for a maximum of 5 minutes. Please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to the chair. And the clerk will hold up a yellow sign when you have 30 seconds remaining. And when your time is complete, the clerk will hold up a red sign. After everyone on the list has been given an opportunity to speak, I will call 3 times to see if there are any additional speakers. And Madam Clerk, can you confirm if we've received any additional correspondence?
Yes, Chair Purdy. The correspondence was received for this item and circulated to councilors.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. And we have Dean McDougall from our planning and development here to give the presentation. So go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of Community Council. My name is Dean McDougall, and I'll be providing the staff presentation for case 22734. The applicant for this case is WSP Global Inc. on behalf of the property owner, Canada Lands Company, and the location is the former Shannon Park lands in Dartmouth. And the proposal is to allow for the creation of a new mixed-use community in North Dartmouth. The subject site is located, as I mentioned, in North Dartmouth at the base of the McKay Bridge. It's located on the shoreline next to the Bedford Institute of Oceanography and Tufts Cove generation plant. It is a large site, approximately 85 acres in size, and it's mostly vacant, except for the Shannon Park School. The site is relatively flat until you come to the coastline, where grades steepen in some areas before reaching the harbor. My colleague Megan outlined this pretty well, so I'll try and skim it quickly. But when a planning application, as she mentioned, is made in a discretionary one that requires approval from Community Council, it's made knowing that development usually was anticipated here and envisioned, and that rules and guidelines were written to help shape what that development would look like. So in HRM, we have 3 levels of planning policies and documents. So start with the regional plan, which is a very high-level document that looks at the municipality in its whole, and it identifies where population growth should occur, and as well as investment in services like transit and piped water and sewer. And then if you zoom down a little bit, you get close to the community plan, which focuses on a very specific geographic area. And this gets a little bit more detailed about what uses can happen where. And so for this application, the community plan is the regional center secondary municipal planning strategy, also known as the center plan. And then we have our third layer, which is the most detailed planning document we have. And it's the land use bylaw. And this outlines specific zoning, uses, land uses allowed, and regulations. And if they don't require special approval by council. So if you meet the rules, you can go get a permit from the development officer and you don't need to engage with the public. So specific to this property, as I mentioned, the regional center or the center plan governs the property. It's serviced by municipal sewer and water. The zoning on the land is the Comprehensive Development District 2 zone, or the CDD2. Its designation is a future growth node, or FGN. I mentioned the existing use is vacant other than the school on the site. And there are several enabling policies in the center plan that allow for this application to be considered. This slide outlines the planning process. As you can see, we're at the public hearing, and the decision of Community Council tonight is appealable. There is a 14-day appeal period. The proposal is to construct 23 new city blocks that will house approximately 3,000 dwelling units within a range of building forms. Approximately 7.5 acres of public parkland is proposed, both on and off-street active transportation trails and pathways throughout the development, and new public streets, municipal services such as water and sewer, and a transit hub. I mentioned that the property is designated Future Growth Node, or FGN. Future growth nodes are lands that are identified in the center plan as having potential to accommodate significant growth due to their site size, location, and proximity to municipal services. So site-specific development agreement criteria and a land use concept for the Shannon Park Future Growth Node was developed through the public consultation process of the center plan. And this image here shows that general land use concept that was approved as part of center plan. I spoke earlier about rules and guidelines that help shape what a development would look like. So for Shannon Park, those were written when the center plan was adopted, and they include things like that a mix of building sizes be provided, so a mid-rise, tall mid-rise, and high-rise buildings, that the land use requirements reference the appropriate zones and sections of the land use bylaw. So I use the land use bylaw as the determining factor in laying down the zoning. That parks and open spaces are provided, including a waterfront park and a centrally located multi-use park. That the transportation network prioritizes multimodal transportation, and that the building and public infrastructure is designed and located to mitigate potential climate change and storm surge risks. I think it's important to quickly touch on what exactly is being decided on here tonight. So if you recall when I talked about the planning documents in HRM, where you start higher up in the regional plan, 30,000 feet in the air, and you get more detail as you move down to the land use bylaw. For an application of this size and this complexity, it follows a similar process. So the first step was sort of the high level stuff, the 30,000 feet in the air, that happened as part of the center plan. So it established the permitted density, how many people are we going to put here, and also identified the general land use concept. What are the types of buildings that should be here in terms of height? And then also identified some things that should be further examined in the development agreement. So that has happened, that's adopted, that's in the center plan. So that brings us to the next stage, which is the development agreement, and is what is being decided on here tonight. And as we get to this one, we zoom in a little bit closer and things get to be in a little bit more focus. And that's where you start seeing generally where the roads are going to be, the parks, the new lots. You identify the higher level stuff like the zoning, so where the uses are going to be and where they can be located. The maximum building heights, setbacks from the streets, how the construction is going to be phased. These types of things get worked out in the development agreement. And then the next stage is the subdivision and permitting stage. And this is where the specifics and the details really come to light. So this is where detailed design happens. So things like street naming, the design of the parks, the architecture and design of each new building, and the collection of the density bonus thing. This is all happens at the subdivision and permitting stage. I will go over some of the high-level major ticket stuff that's in the development agreement. The first I'll talk to is the zoning. So based on the guidance from the regional plan and the center plan, these lands are identified as a major growth center. So they've been identified as a place where we want to put people. And so based on that, staff have determined that the most appropriate zone for the site is the Center 2 zone, with the high order residential zone applied to the site abutting the school and the institutional zone on the school site itself. The Parks and Community Facilities zone will be placed on the two park parcels and as well as the AT connection pieces as well. If you remember, the guiding policies talked about a mix of building forms, so mid-rise, tall mid-rise, and high-rise buildings, and that should be throughout the development. Those building typologies are classified by height parameters and such. So with that reason, heights were used to ensure that this mix is provided throughout the development. So with guidance from the public, height was distributed throughout the site, with the highest buildings being located on the perimeter adjacent to the McKay Bridge, and then transitioning down to the main street, which would be the blue blocks on the image shown here. And this is intended to be the heart of the development, the main street. I will go on a little bit more about the main street because it is a central part of the development, and it's shown here in red. So the development agreement designates it a pedestrian-oriented commercial street that requires greater detail in designing the building facades to help activate the streetscape there. The agreement also requires that the setbacks from the street increase as you move closer to the waterfront park. So this widens the view corridor and heightens the focal points of both the waterfront park and Halifax Harbour. Two future park locations are provided to serve the needs of future residents and the surrounding communities. And these park parcels have been central to the Shannon Park proposal since its inception and have been well supported through the community consultation. So the first one is the Central Park. It's located next to the Shannon Park school site. It's proposed to be a multi-use park that's going to allow outdoor recreation facilities as well as passive open spaces. And then we have the Waterfront Park. It's located along the entire shorefront of the site. And it's intended to provide natural green spaces and then create an area for social gathering and passive recreation while also providing unique views of Halifax Harbour. This park will also include multi-use trails, which will connect the waterfront area to the rest of the development, but also the surrounding community. And then in addition, there's a main street, which is shown here in that green arrow. It also requires enhanced front yard landscaping requirements. So this will enhance the pedestrian experience and also provide a connecting pathway, a green pathway, between the two prominent park pieces. The agreement also requires that all roads within the development be built at a storm surge sea level rise elevation established in the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw. So as we know, the street line establishes the grade, the ground floor of a building, and it's also the elevation at which a park is accessed. So requiring this will make all new buildings, parks, and other public infrastructure more flood resistant, and will minimize the risk of damage caused by future sea level rise and storm surge events by requiring them all to be elevated. The proposed transportation network promotes connectivity and prioritizes multimodal transportation. And this is through a collector road, which is shown yellow, the yellow line here on the image. And this is inclusive of a transit service and a AAA bike lanes. And it will connect Windmill Road and Princess Margaret Boulevard. And this is to be built in the first phase. Also located on this road will be a transit hub in the general location of the yellow circle, which is to be a sheltered stop with bus bays where transfers could be facilitated. The agreement also requires active transportation connections and a walkable street and sidewalk grid to enable people to easily walk and cycle to and within the site. And as you probably are aware, in 2020, Regional Council approved the Rapid Transit Study that proposed a ferry terminal and route to Shannon Park, to the Shannon Park area. Halifax Transit has advised that the location of the ferry terminal has yet to be determined, and that the most suitable location for a terminal would actually be on the shoreline to the right, would be on the Millbrook First Nation lands. So since the ferry is outside the scope of the DA, The agreement requires that the road reserves, which are shown in yellow, are wide enough to accommodate active transportation as well as transit services, should the potential ferry terminal location be identified on abutting lands. And as with other areas of the center plan, incentive or bonus zoning is required to help achieve the affordable housing objectives. So the developer in this case is required to pay a public benefit value that is based on the appraised market value of the site once the development agreement is approved, multiplied by a coefficient of 0.12. And flexibility is provided to the developer on when the required public benefit value is to be paid, either through a one-time payment at the beginning of each subdivision phase or in advance of each building permit being issued. And as per the requirements of the land use bylaw, at least 60% of the public benefit contribution must be dedicated towards affordable housing. In terms of public engagement feedback, the level of engagement completed was consultation, and we did this through information sharing on our HRM website, signage posted on the subject site. We did a mail out notification, and we did our engagement during the height of COVID, so we had to do online presentation videos, and we did an online survey. Feedback from the community generally included the following, which was the need for affordable housing and seniors housing, the type of park space desired, and the importance of having harbor access, and the importance of active transportation and transit infrastructure. In terms of some stats on the engagement, the notifications mailed out was 1,200. I surprisingly received only 28 individual contacts to me personally, but most of the people commented through the survey, which we had over 300 responses to the survey. And in terms of web page views, there was 4,778 unique IP addresses. I'll talk briefly here about non-substantive amendments. So a non-substantive amendment is a change to the agreement which could be made without a formal public hearing like we're having here tonight. As proposed, the non-substantive amendment with this agreement includes the following, which would be rezoning of the Shannon Park school site to the established residential designation, should this be warranted at a future date. Changes to the agreement required to accommodate active transportation and transit route to the off-site transit hub I spoke to. Changes to accommodate potential future Halifax Harbour Bridge and Nova Scotia Power infrastructure relocations. And changes to the proposed phasing plan, as well as extension to the dates of commencement and completion of development. So with that, staff recommend that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council approve the proposed development agreement as set out in Attachment A of the staff report dated January 6, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of clarification? Go ahead, Councilor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dean, thank you. And Dean, thank you to you and your colleagues on this file, because there's been many planners and HRM with their hands on this file. So I appreciate the work on it. So again, thank you so much. Can you bring up that slide again when you talked about the affordable housing and the density bonusing?
Yep, this one?
Thanks.
Yep.
Yep. I wonder if you could help those watching here today and those maybe watching online and help to explain what this means when we talk about density bonusing. So,
Sure.
What does this look like? And, the money collected, where does that go? How does it end in affordable housing? I think that's what people are trying to understand. We talk about it on a day-to-day basis, but I think sometimes we forget that not everybody understands that. So if you
Sure.
could.
Yes, absolutely. So once the development agreement is in place, an appraisal of the development with those approvals in place is done. This is prior to construction, prior to anything being built. And that the value of that property is then multiplied by what I have here, a coefficient of 0.112. And that is a predetermined estimation of the increase of value from today with no approvals in place to when the approvals are in place. And so that money is due to the municipality. And as I mentioned, it's flexible when it's due, but it is due at the very least before the first building permit's issued. And that money is provided we have municipal coffers in place that's set up, a reserve set up specifically for affordable housing. So that money goes in there and it can only be taken out for uses of affordable housing. And the program in place right now is a grant program that's open to non-for-profits that can apply to receive money for whatever purpose they need, either to purchase land or to finance a project with affordable housing purposes.
Yeah, thanks for that, Dean. And one other question on the affordable housing piece, if I may. But doesn't necessarily mean that grant money is going to be used for affordable housing on this site, though. Is that correct?
That's
Can you
correct.
clarify that, please?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. That is for the regional center. So the money could be anywhere within the regional center,
Right.
not necessarily here in Dartmouth. It could go in Halifax. It could go into South Woodside, areas like that.
Okay, thank you for that, Dean. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one question on the slide that had the non-substantive, if we could just flip to that. Is that a misprint, or am I rezoning of Shannon Park School to establish residential?
No, that's correct. Yeah.
So why establish residential? Because that's the lowest density designation in the center plan. It would be awfully weird to, if we were going to rezone Shannon Park School, because they were going to do something else with it, to rezone that to basically single unit type homes in the midst of an apartment community.
The established residential is the lowest designation, but there are zones within it that allow for small multis, but singles as well. I'm just going to open up the agreement real quick to look at that section.
Just strikes me as a really odd choice.
Well, this request was put in place also by the applicant, and staff felt that it was suitable given that it is its current use as the school, and we wanted just to ensure that when the change in use happens, that it is not a negative impact onto the park space, abutting it by putting multi-unit dwellings with significant setbacks right on the property line. And yes, that is a misprint. We also have the high order residential zone as well, designation in there as well. So there's two possible designations
Okay,
available.
so now that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good eye, Councillor Austin. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the rezoning of the school, Dean, if you could just speak to that. I don't want people to get excited and thinking, what do you mean they're taking the school down? Yeah, could you explain that to them? That's not what's happening here, but if you could clarify, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. This is a project that is intended to have a long lifespan in terms of when full completion build out will happen. And so we're trying to plan for every possible scenario. And in the possible scenario that should the school be closed by HRCE in the future, if that happens, we'll have something in place to ensure that the development, those lands are cohesively brought into the rest of the development.
Thanks, Ron. I just want to clarify that. So when I spoke to HRCE on it, there's no plans to close school in the immediate future. So but down the road, that may happen. That's all that they're planning for. Yeah. Thank you, Dean. Madam Chair, thank you.
Excellent.
Oh, I'm good.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay, wonderful. So we're going to open the public hearing, and I can now invite the applicant, Ann Winters from WSP, to provide their presentation. Welcome. And you have 10 minutes.
Great. I will do my best. Just keep it under 10 minutes. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Winters. I'm a planner with WSP located in our local Burnside office in Dartmouth. And I'm here today to present the Shannon Park Development Agreement application as part of this public hearing. And I'm doing so on behalf of our client, Canada Lands Company, who also I have representatives here with me this evening. So a little bit on the company before I get into the application. Canada Lands is a real estate development company that optimizes the financial and community value from properties that are no longer required by the Government of Canada. The company's activities ensure that former government properties are harmoniously reintegrated into local communities. Canada Lands reshapes them to meet the needs of Canadians with inspiring and new sustainable neighborhoods in which we can all live, work, and play. So this file is for the application of a development agreement to develop an 85-acre parcel of land known as Shannon Park, which Canada Lands acquired in 2014. Dean has previously provided you with an overview of that enabling policy, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it because I have a lot to say in 10 minutes. So I'm going to bypass this. Again, Dean has presented to you all with most of this information, so I'm not going to dwell on it for too long. We are utilizing center plan zones across the site. We intend to bring up to 3,000 units to the area, in addition to over 18 acres of park space and open space. So a little bit on the timeline of Shannon Park. This project started with a large community-wide consultation and visioning session, which was conducted over 2015 and into 2016. And it concluded the development with a preferred concept plan. In 2016, a proposed development submission was made utilizing that development plan. However, a resubmission was required since a new planning framework called the Center Plan was really gaining momentum and eventually came into effect. So the resubmission that was made in 2019 and really brought this application more in line with that visioning policy that Dean had touched on earlier. So that brings us to tonight, where we are now having our public hearing and second reading for the DA. Going forward, Canada Lands will work independently of center plan land use requirements to develop a set of urban design guidelines, which will ingrain a high standard of design and sustainability for the future build-out of this community. It's been a long road, but as Councillor Mancini alluded to during the first reading discussion, there have been a number of things that have impacted this development over the past 8 years. And I think it's safe to say that we're all grateful and happy to be in the position that we are tonight at this public hearing, and looking forward to seeing the vision of the community brought to life on the site through this DA. So as part of the DA process, there's always things that need to be negotiated and worked through for a variety of reasons. So some of those items that we have altered since the PIM in 2021 are highlighted on the screen. The first item is that we removed the development block located in the waterfront area as shown in the red circle. This was seen as a strategic move whereby we took that development opportunity and redistributed the density across the other areas of the site. So this move resulted in a more usable and programmable leisure and recreation space and would give full views and access to the waterfront for residents and visitors to enjoy and utilize. So as part of that trade-off, much of that reallocated density was located along the proposed hardscape urban wedge park that was previously positioned along the bottom half of the main street spine. We have made conditions in the DA, however, to still give that activated public-private space along this corridor that would really replicate the overall intent of that previously envisioned wedge park along this portion of the site. Okay, so the list you see here are the guiding principles that the community had developed as part of the vision for Shannon Park. And the next few slides will really touch on how this particular development agreement, as well as Canada Land's future projects, will aim to address them and implement them. So the first set is vibrancy, land use, and built form. So Shannon Park will have center plan zones applied to the site. The majority of the site will have CEN2 zone applied to it, which really reflects very much that mix of land uses and built forms that were imagined by the community. Typologies such as high-rise apartment style to mid-rise or stacked townhouses are all part of the vision that was accounted for within Shannon Park. And having a mix of land uses is also a key element of this community to give that those that live here or visit here a truly complete community experience. Mobility. So mobility and complete streets and connectivity for all users, regardless of age and ability, is a priority for Shannon Park. The red arrow on the map here shows where the intended two-way on and off street AAA AT facilities will be located. Within this area, those facilities would likely include protected bike lanes, which would facilitate movement in both directions, as well as off-street multi-use pathways located on either side of this street. So these facilities are in addition to a wider right-of-way to allow for wider sidewalks and additional landscaping space. This was one of the moves that we had made to kind of reintegrate that look and feel of that lost urban wedge park that I had previously talked about. So the image on the left shows the current Canada 150 trail that runs through the lower part of the waterfront park. And then to the right, these are some of the examples of how we imagine the AT connections and facilities to look like. And the image on the bottom right corner is actually a rendering that WSP had produced for the Cogswell district. And we feel it's very, very reflective of how we imagine this portion of Shannon Park to look like. Lots of space to safely move and enjoy the public realm. Okay, parks now. So this is the DA schedule, which illustrates the parkland and open space connections. The park at the school, so the center park, is about 4 acres, and the waterfront park will actually be just over 9 acres of land with 3.7 acres that is accounted for as the dedicated parkland space. Beyond these 2 parks, open space connections are located between blocks 13 and 14, as well as the lower part of block 22, which is really just meant to enhance the overall AT connection of the site to surrounding areas. So these are images of park fit-up plans that we had produced as part of the planning process, and it gives you a sense of what could be incorporated within the waterfront park. We imagine it being a more leisurely parkland space with trails and views of the harbor and lots of places to sit and enjoy the site and space. Whereas the center park, or the park next to the school, we imagine it being a little bit more active in its use with programmed sports fields and courts and things like playgrounds or maybe even a splash pad. Okay, now the public realm. So this section circled in the DA schedule has been designated as a pedestrian-oriented commercial space as defined under center plan, which has a number of its own design requirements to really encourage that active streetscape space. So another thing we did, we also implemented minimum setback requirements along this portion of Main Street. And really that's meant with the intent of trying to keep the overall vibe and intent of what that lost urban wedge park had previously provided. So in addition to a wider right-of-way and multi-use pathways on either side of the street, the DA is also requiring minimum setback distances, which is meant to provide the gradual wedge-like shape so that the buildings on either side will help frame those iconic views of the harbor. So within these increased setbacks, we imagine these public-private spaces being filled with things like retail displays, cafes, patios, lots of places to sit, maybe some public art installations, and are really meant to provide a seamless transition from the privately owned space into the public right-of-way, similar to what you see on these slides here. Okay, commemoration. So while there isn't anything specifically within the DA that speaks to commemoration, this is a critical part of the vision of Shannon Park and something that Canada Lands values as part of all its projects. Future work and engagement with stakeholders and the public are currently being worked on now as part of the urban design guidelines and commemoration strategy for this site. These images are examples of other Canada Land communities where commemoration has been strategically kind of peppered into their communities. Now, what that looks like for Shannon Park is still to be determined, but it is certainly something that will be part of the overall site build-up. Okay, and then my final slide. These other areas of interest is what we're calling. These really are outside of the parameters of the DA, but we realize that this is a pretty prominent site and that you wonderful people around this table are likely interested to hear what we have to say on some of these sites, as well as some people in the room. So we thought we would spend a minute and just touch on some of these key parts. So Millbrook First Nation. Millbrook have been and will continue to be critical and valued partners in the visioning and build out of Shannon Park. They've been included and collaborated with since the visioning of this community and will continue to be vital partners throughout all phases of the Shannon Park build-out. Canada Lands and Millbrook are also coordinating infrastructure and site works efforts to ensure that their communities can come together to create a community that's welcome for all. Affordable housing. Providing affordable housing is a critical piece of the Shannon Park development and is something that stands really at the core of how Canada Lands envisions the development of their communities. Canada Lands is looking to push the envelope in affordable housing provision for Shannon Park and is striving to provide a minimum of 20% of all future units on the site to be dedicated as ones for affordable housing. Canada Lands is passionate on this cause and commitment and intends to explore and utilize different tools and options to bring the physical affordable housing units to the site, including as part of the public benefit agreement rather than just the cash in lieu option that is standard practice right now in HRM. And then finally, the HRM and Halifax Transit staff have been and are continuing to look at the best location for the future potential ferry terminal, which would serve the entire North Dartmouth community and region. So while the best location is still to be determined, Canada Lands will work with HRM on providing the appropriate connections and, if needed or if appropriate, the appropriate shoreline for a passenger ferry for the greater community. So that entire waterfront is currently meant to serve for public use, and there is an abundance of opportunity to give way to a future ferry terminal if appropriate. So that concludes my presentation. Myself, as well as CLC's representative, Mary Jarvis, are happy to provide any answers to any clarifying questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Winters, do we have any? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you. Thank you for the presentation. That's fantastic. I want to go back down to your last slide, which really wasn't part of the DA, but you alluded to affordable housing. So we heard from Dean earlier that what HRM is to apply here is density bonusing, and which is fabulous, which helps. My concern with that process is that doesn't guarantee any affordable housing on this site in Dartmouth North on Shannon Park. That's my concern. So can you speak to elaborate a little more, Anne, about what's Canada Land's intention? You gave us a number of 20% of the units there could be affordable, which is fantastic. But what are the steps that we have to go through with Canada Lands to have that conversation?
Sure. So I guess the first step in getting affordable housing to the site is having this DA approved. So once approved, Canada Lands will be exploring other tools and partnerships of how to bring physical affordable units to the Shannon Park community. One of those tools we know will need to be explored is having physical units accepted through the public benefit agreement rather than the cash in lieu option, which is currently standard practice. So at some point, likely sooner than later, we know that an MPS and land use bylaw amendment will be something that Canada Lands will want to explore to make that change so that the physical units can be accepted as part of the density bonusing agreement rather than the cash in lieu. What that amendment looks like now is hard to predict, whether it be a site-specific request or a more blanketed policy. It is hard to know, but Canada Lands will work closely with staff and council to determine the best approach for that.
And just to clarify and simplify that for folks watching at home or here, so we have the tools of density bonusing, which takes money and puts it into a fund, and we grant that to nonprofit groups that can build affordable housing. But again, no guarantee that affordable housing that's going to be built would be on this site. So what Canada Lands is doing, looking at changing the policy so that we can take a look at a different way of doing that. None of that's going to be approved tonight, even if the DA goes ahead, but we're getting commitment from Canada Lands to have those conversations with our staff. So just wanted to clarify because a lot of folks want to understand that, right? The second question I have of clarification is, can you talk about timeline? So if the development agreement is approved tonight, can you give us a sense of timelines? What's going to be taking place? We talked about affordable housing pieces, what's going on. So if you could explain, so folks are all asking, great, when? In supply.
I understand. It's myself included as a resident of Dartmouth. We're all anxious to see this get up and going. So should the DA be approved tonight? So then I think Dean alluded to kind of the next steps beyond the DA is subdivision. So Canada Lands is currently working on a set of urban design guidelines, which they will which will operate independent of center plan and will be applied to the site to mandate a higher level of of design onto the site. So they're working on that, and then they're also working on the detailed design to provide servicing and roads to the area. So I guess once that's approved, then they'll start, or once that's completed and implemented, then they'll start looking into subdivision of land and going to market with potential future builders. So in terms of timeline, I can't put a year on it. Maybe I'll invite Mary to come up and.
You were doing such a great job. Didn't want to interrupt you. Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Mary Jarvis. I'm Acting Senior Director for Canada Lands for the National Capital Region and Atlantic. Currently, our schedule is that we would start servicing in 2024, and in around that time, we would release properties to the marketplace and work with builders to realize the vision.
Good. Thank you for that. And when we get to debate, I'll kind of explain that in more detail later on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so we have opened the public hearing. So now we are going to go to the speakers list, and I am going to call the first three speakers up to come to the microphone, and you are welcome to speak for 5 minutes. So please state your name when you get to the microphone and your community. And first on the list is Area MLA Susan LeBlanc. You are welcome to come up. And then we have Patty Christie and Lisa Hayhurst. Yep, go ahead, wherever you want.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Susan LeBlanc, and I am the MLA for Dartmouth North, which is where Shannon Park is situated. I just want to come with a little bit of context. This is an exciting plan and presentation, and yeah. Anyway, but the context that I come with is about affordable housing. Surprise, surprise. So for the last 3 years, I would say. People that come to my constituency office for help, the help that they're looking for is in housing. So people who have rent increases that they can't afford, people who are being rent evicted, people who are waiting for subsidized housing and being told it's going to be 3 years or more, people who are couch surfing, and people who are actually homeless, living in tents or on the street. So we all know this, in a housing crisis. We have in Dartmouth North, the vacancy rates in buildings of 100 units plus was 0.2%, much lower than the record low of 1% for all of the rest of HRM. And that means, so for people who actually live in the community now, if they are evicted or have to leave their homes, there literally is nowhere to go. As well, the average increase in rent in Dartmouth North was the highest in HRM at 12.7% last year. So I want to say that there are very exciting things about this development plan. Especially, I personally love the commitment to active transit and the transit hub and a waterfront park and all of the other green space. And the mixed use, like the design, the pictures are beautiful. I want to live there. But I only want to live there if other people who make less than me and more than me can also live there. So in mixed use needs to be about mixed use or mixed income as well as different heights of buildings. So I appreciate and applaud the commitment to affordable housing that has just been talked about. But like my colleague, Mr. Mancini, I really do worry about there being affordable housing in our community, in the community of Shannon Park, in the community of Dartmouth North. And when we talk about affordable housing, this is really what my point is that we need to actually define what affordable is. And right now we're talking, many developers are talking about affordable being, we hear about 20% below market value. That simply does not mean affordable anymore, at least at the market rates that are happening right now. So I implore you, I beg you to define affordable as being 30% of one's income. So rent geared to income or mortgage geared to income or whatever it looks like. The going understanding is 30%. It could possibly be lower at this point, given all of the other things that are going up. But I implore you to be courageous in defining affordable like that. I see people from not-for-profit housing projects here tonight. I'm hoping that when things go to market, that there will be a prioritization of not-for-profit housing, of co-op housing, so that we can ensure that it truly is a mixed development, and people of all income levels will be able to live in this beautiful, beautiful area of the city. I think I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Patty Christie is next. Come on up.
Patty Christie, District 6. Thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts on this matter. I'm speaking for myself, but also on behalf of many other residents of Shannon Park, former residents. I was very fortunate to have lived in Shannon Park, Wallace Heights in the 60s and 70s. Shannon Park was more than just military housing. It was a community. It was a unique community, as we had so much in common besides our Navy dads. We had our own schools, churches, rink, pool, recreation center, canteen, playgrounds. For 5 decades, Shannon Park flourished with military families. It was a great place to grow up. Many of us grew up together from elementary school to high school, and what resulted was lifelong friendships and wonderful memories. Whether you lived there in the 50s or the 90s, you always feel connected to this community, even as the land sits empty today. Shannon Park was built in 1951, and 65 years later, it was retired, having served its purpose. It was sad seeing our community unoccupied since 2004, and it was bittersweet when the structures were taken down in 2016. But our friendships and memories continue to live on regardless. We have had a few reunions and have some small reunions from time to time. Last Christmas, we had our 6th annual tree decorating, where many of us get together to decorate the big tree across the road from the school. That's our last physical reminder. The ornaments have our family names as well as in memory of those we have lost over the years. And every year since Canada Lands built the Canada 150 Trail look-off, many of us get together a couple times during the season to enjoy this beautiful spot. Canada Lands created a development plan in 2016 with meaningful public engagement in 2014 and 15. I attended all the public consultations and have followed this process closely from the beginning. I was very pleased with Canada Land's vision for a new community. A community consisting of residential retail space coupled with parks and outdoor recreation areas. There will never be another Shannon Park as I know it, but I applaud Canada Land's commitment to create something similar and appreciate all they have done. This has been a long process with many setbacks over the years. HRM is experiencing a housing crisis, and 3,000 residential units is significant. In an ideal world, all housing would be affordable to all, but in this day and age, it's unfortunately not always possible. The housing created by this development will be affordable to many, but not all. And as much as I would like to live on this land again, I don't expect it will be affordable to me. But I think it's just as important to simply have more housing in HRM. These 3,000 residential units are desperately needed in our growing municipality. Council, as a former resident of Shannon Park and a current resident of District 6, I encourage approval of Canada Land's proposed development agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lisa Hayhurst. Welcome. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lisa Hayhurst. I am the chair of Dartmouth Acorn. Acorn is an organization for low to moderate income tenants who are disproportionately affected by the affordable housing crisis in the HRM. I, for one, live in Highfield, which is not too far from this proposed development. Historically speaking, Shannon Park was affordable housing. It needs to remain that way. Now, Acorn is in support of the general community demands being brought forth by other groups, such as 20% of the land for housing to be allocated for non-market housing, such as public, co-op, nonprofit, community land trust that commits to permanently affordable housing. This allocation is to be included at every phase of development at the same time as market development or in advance of market development. Lastly, these conditions need to be written into the development agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. The next three speakers, Maura Donovan, Sue LaPierre, Brian Gifford. So thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Maura Donovan. I live in downtown Dartmouth, and I'm a longtime follower of the Shannon Park situation. This is, as everyone knows, 85 hectares is a huge parcel of taxpayer-owned land in the urban core. And the public owns the land, and the public, I believe, has been very clear about the desire to have affordable housing as a significant part of this redevelopment. And I think it's great that Canada Lands Company has incorporated that. I agree with previous speakers around the need to have deeply affordable units and to have them be permanently affordable. Those two things are absolutely crucial. Something that's affordable for 20 years is not. That's just, oh, it's awful. Anyway, there's nothing good about that. And it's poor investment in terms of public monies to have things be affordable for a very short period of time in the life of a building. And the rent geared to income generally accepted 30% of a person's income or a household's income is as Susan LeBlanc said, the commonly defined understanding of what keeps people from having hardship in their living circumstances. And I think that is absolutely crucial in striving in the design of this entire plan, because if people have hardship where they live, they're going to move. And that leads to a lot of heartache, instability, homelessness, all of that. So it doesn't lead to a mixed income community. So the 30% thing is absolutely crucial. So again, as Susan LeBlanc said, I implore you to be courageous. And I would also say creative in proceeding around working with nonprofits, housing co-ops, and seriously considering a community land trust. And as the speaker from Acorn said, putting things, codifying things, putting them in writing at this stage so that we have some predictability of what's happening and the guarantee of these really important things being incorporated into this significant proposal.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sue LaPierre. Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for providing us with this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm speaking on behalf of the organization I work for, United Way Halifax, where our vision is Halifax, a city united in compassion, rich in opportunity, and free of poverty. We think the opportunity to develop Shannon Park lands is very exciting. It's not often a city of our size gets the chance to develop a significant piece of land in a space that has existing amenities and services, mature green space, and by all accounts, this will be a great place for a lot of people. Our city is growing by leaps and bounds, and housing and business services that will be built here will be important to help accommodate continued growth well into the future. The downside of growth at this pace is it doesn't benefit everyone equally. We all know that many residents have been struggling when it comes to housing. At United Way, we believe housing is a human right. The opportunity to provide truly affordable housing in this development at this size, in this location, is one that must be considered carefully. We are pleased to see that Canada Lands has committed to going above HRM's general policy and require 20% of the housing in this development to be affordable. It will be a significant boost in affordable units at a time when people really need them. We are also calling on Canada Lands and HRM to take it a step further, to define affordability in a way that ensures these units are truly affordable for those people who need them most, and to make those units permanently available, as many of the other speakers have said here tonight. Last week, CMHC released their rental market report for 2022. While it is likely comes as no surprise that the vacancy rate has remained at 1%, and the average monthly rent has increased to almost $1,500. It's the information about the affordability for different incomes that we find most alarming. For households with incomes below $28,000, the lowest 20% of income earners in HRM, only 3% of their housing is considered affordable. That's not 3% of all housing. That's 3% of the households at that income level. In other words, 97% of the lowest income earners in our municipality are living in housing that is considered unaffordable. This includes people living on income assistance, but it also includes people engaged in low-wage work, seniors, and people working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet with no benefits. This has a devastating impact on budgets and means people are being forced to make decisions between food, medication, and transportation. The next income quintile is households between the incomes of $28,000 and $46,000. 1/3 of these households can afford their housing. Again, this severely impacts affordability day to day and month to month. It's in part why we're seeing so many employed people reaching out to food banks and other food programs for the first time, and why more employed people are applying for heating assistance. When the alternative is sleeping in a tent, people will choose to pay for rental far beyond their means, but that is unsustainable and makes meeting their needs a constant challenge. For the affordable housing component of this development to be truly a success, we believe those who need affordable housing the very most need to be considered. These low-income earners deserve quality, appropriate, safe, affordable homes just as much as anybody else. We implore you to take that into consideration, and when you're defining exactly what affordability means for this development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Griffin. All right, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. My name is Brian Gifford. I live on Summit Street on Halifax Peninsula in District 8. I lived in co-op housing for 20 years. I worked for an organization that helped new co-ops get started for 3 years, and I've done other work in affordable housing in other communities. I have a keen interest in community land trusts, and I'm helping to get some of them started right now. I attended some of the public consultations for the Shannon Park site, and I note that at the consultations I attended, there was a very strong interest in including affordable housing on the site. I'm reinforcing what the previous speakers have said. We are in the middle of an acute shortage of affordable housing. We all know that. By that, I mean housing that is affordable to low and modest income households, which CMHC's definition of affordable housing does not accomplish. I'm pleased to know that Canada Lands proposes 20% of the housing that will be built on the site will be affordable, but the devil is in the details. We have all heard scandalous stories of millions in public funding going to private developers for 10 years of affordability with rents at $1,500 a month. We know that the best kind of affordable housing is non-market housing on land owned by non-market organizations. I have seen developments in other cities where affordable housing is left to the last phase of the development and doesn't get built. A recent news report quoted Councillor Mancini as saying that Canada Lands has guaranteed in the past that affordable housing will be built on a certain percentage of the lands they sell. This is encouraging. I haven't actually heard it put that way in the presentations tonight though. I strongly urge that the development agreement or some other form of agreement at the next stage after the development agreement for this site include the following conditions, and I'm going to repeat the kinds of conditions that other people have talked about. 20% of the land for housing be allocated for non-market housing, that is public, co-op, or nonprofit housing or a community land trust that commits to permanently affordable housing. That this allocation be included at every phase of development at the same time as market development or in advance of market development. That's the way it'll actually get done. And that this allocation be at no cost to the non-market housing developers to help make it affordable. This should not be subject to the availability of funding to build the housing. If the land is available, affordable housing will be built. There are no excuses to fudge on this question. I confess I don't know all the conditions in your policies. I've learned some of the conditions tonight, and I'm very glad to have at least somewhat better understanding. But I find it rather appalling that your policy only allows cash and doesn't allow an actual provision of affordable housing. And I hope that you do make the kind of change that Canada Lands is asking for, not just for this project, but for all projects. It really is astounding to me. I lived in California for a number of years in a community that had inclusionary housing, and there are many communities across California that do. And the inclusionary housing included actual provision of housing. Or cash in lieu. It was one or the other, not just cash in lieu. That's the weakest form of inclusionary housing. I also wanted to make one comment about the definition of affordable housing and the way Lisa put it, Sue put it with all her talking about incomes at different levels. That's the definition of affordable housing as 30% of income is not an adequate definition unless you include that it has to be at those different levels of income. And I hope that Canada Lands follows that kind of definition and that they do the right thing. And if the city isn't going to require it, I would suggest that Canada Lands themselves insert this in writing into one of the agreements they have with the city at their request. Thank you very much. It's a wonderful proposal on many levels, but affordable housing really does need to be better dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And seeing there's no other speakers on the list, I will open it up to the gallery to see if anyone would like to come to speak. Absolutely. Just state your name and your community, please. And you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Timothy Allenby. I'm a co-chair of the Dartmouth chapter of ACORN. And, you know, I will echo everything that's been said so far tonight, that the development is good, the commitment to 20% affordable housing is good, that it needs to be at all levels of income. But I think it would be good if we can have, you know, on the record, as it were, you know, some firm numbers there. The Nova Scotia minimum wage is currently $13.60 an hour, which for a 40-hour work week is $544. 4 weeks in a month, that's $2,176 in a month before tax. So 30% of that would be $652.80 a month, which when you realize that is the level of affordability for someone on minimum wage, puts the fact that the average rent in Nova Scotia right now is somewhere in the ballpark of, you know, I've heard $1,500 tonight. I read a headline that said $2,000 the other day. It shows the insanity of that, frankly. So I am a firm believer that the character of a city is in the people that live there, that work there, and we can't have the amenities that we expect from a livable city without the people to make it function. You know, retail workers, restaurant workers, grocery workers, delivery drivers. All of these people deserve to be able to put a roof over their own head through their own work. So I think there has to be a pegging of affordable housing, not just to, you know, define it in terms of different income levels, but to make sure that even at the lowest income level, that an individual through their own labor can house themselves and meet their needs. And I wanted to make that clear, just, you know, what affordability looks like in the numbers for people who are at the bottom of the ladder, but who are putting in the work and who are, trying to make ends meet these days. Not really much more to say than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any others? Yeah, absolutely. Come on up. Please state your name and your community, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Erin Walters from Dartmouth, and I'm going to shift away from, I feel affordable housing is very important, but just as a flip side, I'm going to speak on behalf of the future students of Ecole Shannon Park Elementary School. And just with a question, I guess I'm just wondering if the school population, which is made up of, on average, 600 young people from all communities in Dartmouth, if the school community would have access to the Central Park and the proposal of that park. And as a person with a passion for activity and having experience teaching through COVID, I have personally seen the importance of outside play and the impact it has on mental health. And I think that the mental health crisis with our students and our whole population is something to be considered as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, come on up. Absolutely. Yeah, come on down. If you could kindly state your name and your community, please. Thank you.
$1. So my name is Mi Yasuokonautu. I'm the executive director at YWCA Halifax. We've been around for 150 years. We currently provide affordable housing. I wasn't going to say anything. Here's the thing. Yes to what everybody said. You know it. We all know it. I won't repeat it. Here's the thing. You can't just give land to a nonprofit for free and then expect everything else for the chips to fall. So construction is what construction is. So the costs for construction for market housing are actually the same as the cost for construction for affordable housing. And you recoup that through your rents. The way this will work is if the market housing is subsidizing the affordable housing in both the construction and in the operations. It has to go together. You can't have one without the other. This is my personal bone to pick is developers, private market want nonprofit to do all of the housing for the lowest income who cannot cover the operating costs. You can't cover a unit that takes $1,000 a month to just run by collecting $300 a month in rent. It doesn't work. You need the income generation to cover off the income loss effectively. But that's how we pay for healthcare. That's how we pay for public school. That's how we pay for all of our social services. We're all paying for the buses. We're all paying for schools. We're all paying for healthcare. We all need to pay for housing. And so it has to be built into this. We've applied for the HRM fund. We've received it. It's a drop in the bucket. If 20% of this land is dedicated to a nonprofit, it's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. That current bucket has $3 million. The Rapid Housing Initiative was only $11 million. I know there were lots of applications, including 2 from us. You need to have a financial model. Canada Lands, WSP, they can run the numbers. They'll know what it costs. And if you don't bake it in, you're going to lose it. So that to me there's a business piece. You do not run housing on goodwill and charity. You don't. It costs money. It costs money for the electricians. It costs money for the cleaners. It costs money. So where's the money coming from? So when developers come to me as a charity, it was a registered charity, and say, I'll build this, and then I don't have to pay whatever, or I get some benefit, and you get just the affordable units. How do I repair those affordable units when they break? I'm not saving money for deferred capital. That's what Nova Scotia Housing's the problem is, right? Because they can't collect the revenue. So we need to collectively figure out the business model of this and bake it in before we press play. So no offense. I think you guys are awesome. I think it's beautiful, but you have to run the numbers. And the numbers are shifting. Interest rates are shifting. Lending is shifting. CMHC funding is shifting. but you could still put some key principles in place. Simon.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Come on down. Thank you.
My name is Denise Meservey. I live on Trinity Avenue in Dartmouth, North End. Grew up in Shannon Park. I have a question about the earlier thing, Dean. That 1.2 or 0.12%, is that from every developer of all these buildings in HRM that are going up now? Oh, okay. But there's lots of future growths, aren't there? Like Marketplace and all those people, like, do they all have to pay this? Not just Shannon Park people, not just, okay, my question, because it seems like a lot of money, because I'm watching buildings every day getting built all over the place in the HRM. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just me. Anyway, I feel Shannon Park is great, and I do agree with affordable housing, but she said I don't know all that stuff. But I just don't think we want to put all our eggs in Shannon Park's basket, because it's a bigger problem than that, right? It's way big. That's all.
Thank you very much. Is there any other speaker? Absolutely. Come on up.
I was just called motor mode, so.
Oh, I heard that. I heard that. You have 5 minutes. Please state your name and
I
your
have
community.
a reputation to uphold. So
Okay.
my name is Mike Acker. I live in Dartmouth North. Listening to all the speakers, there was one speaker who said one word, and I've heard that word only once tonight. Yet in the online information about what the project is going to look like in terms of the goals, affordable housing and seniors. And I've only heard seniors mentioned once. And like the lady from Trinity Avenue, I grew up in Dartmouth North. I've got an affinity for Dartmouth North. I always considered that land to be the jewel in the crown, if you will. So as a senior who's aging quickly, I'm concerned that that element of the plan is not getting the attention that it needs. So, to my point, okay, I thought that I always had a vision, and in other countries they do this much better than we do. Matter of fact, I don't even think we do it at all, because I've listened to the discussion on Fall River, Ketch Harbour, wherever seniors want to wherever there's a development proposal, it's always an uphill battle, and it should not be that way. Aging in place, we don't have it here. We've got this huge swath of land at Shannon Park. When you look at it, you could have the potential is there for seniors housing. We have a real problem with the number of long-term care beds in the province. So what a great opportunity, we have to work on this project, to look at aging in place, housing for seniors to a long-term care facility, and take that a step further. And my suggestion would be that at some point, the developers of this project sit down with the province, because I have yet to see in any of the slides where you've got parks and you've got a commercial aspect, but where anybody has actually addressed healthcare. If you look at Dartmouth North, Primrose Street, as far as I know, is the only medical clinic pretty much north of the shopping center. So you have a big area. So you're going to have thousands of people living in this new project. So my point basically is two issues. You look closely at doing something differently by working with the province, particularly on the long-term care aspect, but have that work hand in hand with seniors housing. Okay, and that doesn't necessarily mean affordable housing and seniors housing are one and the same. That they can be, but that you look at that and work with the province in particular. That when you put that that many people in an urban setting, and given what we're lacking in Dartmouth North, that we have an opportunity for a long-term care facility there, and especially a new medical clinic. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers? Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim O'Rourke. I currently live in the Ocean Breeze Village, just west of the proposed Shannon Park area. And everything I've heard tonight, I agree with. Affordable housing, the care facility, the clinic, it's all good to me. My concern is more of a question. When we start construction, or if we start construction in the Shannon Park area, is the Princess Margaret Boulevard going to be affected or closed at points, preventing people to access the bridge from where I am?
Okay, we're not really supposed to, yeah, okay. Councillor Mancini will ask that of staff, okay? When we finish the public hearing, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Just
question. Yep.
don't sit down yet. Just
go
a
ahead.
question of clarification. Could you explain that again? Your question again about construction is?
If the roads will be blocked off while they're building
at Princess Margaret
construction, yes.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I'll ask.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Do we have any other speakers? Anyone else wishing to speak? Do we have any other speakers who wish to speak? Third and final time. Any other speakers who wish to speak? Okay, no, we will close the public hearing.
I need a seconder, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll put the following motion on the floor that the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, one,
Just
approve.
a point of order, doesn't the applicant have a chance if they want?
Oh my goodness, apologies. Yes. Yes. So, my bad. Applicant, Miss Winters, if you would like to respond to any of those comments, you are welcome. You are welcome to come and respond.
I don't think so, except thank you everyone for coming up.
Okay, excellent. So now we can close the public hearing. Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Councillor Mancini, go ahead.
A little deja vu. I'd like to put the following motion on the floor. The Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, one, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated January 6, 2023. Sorry, what is it?
It's revised attachment.
Oh, mine says substantial. Revised stat attachment A. Okay. And two, require the agreement be signed by the property owner within 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of the final approval by the council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, which is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at the end. So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Wow. I do need to repeat some of the things I did when we did the first reading here. We've been at this since 2015. I believe, probably some of the biggest, the largest public consultation we've ever seen in Dartmouth. around Shannon Park lands. And many of you mentioned that you're at the many public meetings and commenting on the different variations that were in front of us that brought us to very close to what you're seeing here tonight. And that was the public that brought us to that. So I thank you for those that participated. And yes, Ann mentioned in her presentation, there were a lot of delays. And I just want to identify some of those delays, why it took us so long to be here. Well, there was a little event that was going to happen, didn't happen, Commonwealth Games, and Shannon Park was identified for that, for a possible stadium. There was the bid for Amazon, and that Shannon Park may play a role in that. There was an actual CFL stadium. There was a waiting for the center plan. There was this little thing that happened around the world called a pandemic. So lots of delays, and it's taken us that long to get here today. It's clear that, you just take a look at what's going on in Dartmouth right now. Shannon Park in Dartmouth is identified as a growth area, but look at the development that's happening in Dartmouth right now. We've not seen that level of development. We're seeing Shannon Park, we're seeing Port Wallace that's underway now, Micmac Mall lands, Penhorn lands, and the list goes on and on. There's a lot of development we have not seen in the history of Dartmouth right now. And it's all good, and we all needed it yesterday. So for me, there's two things that are extremely important for Shannon Park. One is the complete community. And we spoke about that tonight. We need to make sure it's a complete community. We've talked about the trails and the AAA bikeways, the 7.4 acres of park space and potential courts and splash pads and all those things. The transit hub, the schools plays an important role. The possibility of a future ferry terminal in the Millbrook First Nations. All this is all part of being a complete communities. I love what the MLA said, making sure that we have people that are living here that are of the same salary as myself and above and below. That's the key to a complete community. So that affordable and accessible housing is that second part of this community that we is a must here. So I want to clarify some of the questions that came up and some of the comments. I'm wondering if staff could come forward. Dean, if you wouldn't mind coming forward just for clarification, please. A number of the speakers spoke about, we need to include in the DA affordable housing. So could you explain that and why that's not a possibility for us?
Sure, absolutely. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. We're bound by the center plan that tells us what we can require in the development agreement, and the tool that we're told through the center plan to obtain affordable housing is the density bonusing. We can't require anything else. If we were to require anything else, such as units or land donation, then we need to go to the center plan and amend that to allow staff the ability to require that. So we have no authority to ask for anything else other than what the center plan tells us what we can ask the applicant for.
Yeah, and just stay there. Could you update us? Where are we with inclusionary zoning? So for those of you that was mentioned by someone here earlier, we don't have the authority to say development X or Y, you need to have 20% affordable housing in that. We've asked the province of Nova Scotia to give us inclusionary zoning, and they have given that to us. But where are we? It's not actually enacted at this point in time. If you could explain that.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. Yes, it's been given. The powers have been given to us by the province through the charter amendments recently. However, I don't know the exact status of where staff are. It's not my team that does that, but I know it is being worked on, and something should be in front of regional council, but it's still with staff developing exactly the mechanics behind that.
I'm wondering, Carl, are you aware of anything beyond that? No, he's a quick shake of the head. No, okay, that's fine. And I wanted to bring that forward. That is I'm hoping we're close to that, and that could be a major game changer for us and some of this conversation that people were asked for. So thank you for that one. The one lady asked about the schools, the school that's there and access to the park. I assume that's a big yes, but is there any conversation with HRCE in that piece?
Through you, Madam Chair of the Council. No conversations to date about that use, but there's a reason why the school is located adjacent to the park, abutting the park. That's anticipated. And if it were to happen, I just want to make sure I'm using the right language. A joint use agreement is going to be required between HRCE and HRM to use it. But as I mentioned, there's the reason that it's located there. So So it's
And I
anticipated.
encourage you, ma'am, I think you're a teacher, so you need to be speaking to HRCE about having that conversation so that we're hitting the ground running when that's in place. Yep, yep, yep. Yep, I agree. Like you, I'm all about healthy, active outdoor living, so I agree with you. The gentleman talked about seniors and including that in the DA policy, and talked about healthcare and long-term medical clinics. I agree. And I agree with everything you said and the gap that we have there. None of that is the municipality. That's the province. So, and I know the MLA and from the area is advocating strongly with the current government on that, but none of that is things that we have the authority. If you could maybe elaborate a little bit on to be able to include that stuff.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. We can enable it through the zoning. So we can have it there as a permitted use, which it is. The Center 2 zone allows shared housing, which is seniors housing. So it's as a permitted use. So should it be located there, it would be permitted to use, but we can't require it to be located there.
Yep. Thank you. So I think those are the questions many of the speakers had. I want to explain about Canada Lands and where they are. So they're not the overall developer like we see other developers here in our community. So they're going to get the land ready. Make sure the road infrastructure is in place, the water and the sewer is in place. And when that's all ready, then they go to the development community and start selling the land. That could be one developer. It could be numerous developers. So that's just so everybody understands Canada Land is not the developer. They get it ready for the developers to take over. I think those are most of my time. What's that? Sorry, there was one question for Princess Margaret. Thank you, Madam Chair. Look at you paying attention. Oh, very good. The gentleman asked for Princess Margaret Boulevard and construction. Are you aware of any of that, or is it pretty premature?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the council. It is premature. The development agreement, as I mentioned in my presentation, we're not quite at that level of detail. That happens later at the permit and subdivision stage, but we do have it through a construction mitigation plan that's required, where things like that are looked at, what kind of impacts would happen to the street network. So those things would be included in the analysis when they get to construction, but it's too high level right now to get into those details.
And typically, we that's Princess Margaret Boulevard is the one access into where you live, sir. And unlikely that we would shut it down. But I mean, it's a very good question. We'll make sure it gets asked at the appropriate time, right? Yeah, good. I think that's all the questions. Thank you, Dean. So finally, I support the motion that's on the floor here today. I'm very excited about this opportunity. I look for support from my colleagues. I look forward to that creative approach to affordable housing. We need to be creative here by all means. And so here's an opportunity to do this and maybe set the stage for other types of developments here. So Canada Lands does have a reputation of doing affordable housing across the country. Hopefully we can be successful here. And we not only need it from density bonusing to go to the nonprofit groups, we need it here in Dartmouth North in the Shannon Park area. So we have to figure out how to do that and take some creativity. Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, I ask you for your support.
You're very welcome, Councillor Mancini, over 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know that.
Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Most of his 5 minutes was questions. So I'll support this wholeheartedly. It's a good plan. It's been a long time coming. I mean, Shannon Park has been this place where we've all poured every hope and dream we have. Could we host the games? Can we have a stadium? Can we attract, this huge employer? Can we have housing? It's been the place of hope and dreams forever. And now we're actually committing to this is what the future vision is. And it's a vision that's come about after a lot of community discussion. So I'm very happy to support it. And we desperately need housing. We need housing, not just affordable housing. We need housing. If you can swing a hammer and build a building, we need you building a building right now. We need everything. It's most acute.
Building by code, though.
Yes, yes. It's most acute, obviously, for the folks who are, at the bottom of the income spectrum. I mean, when there's the push going on, it's the people down at the bottom that are falling off and being totally let down in our market. And so, mainly, I actually want to talk about that. There was one of the speakers. He talked about cash versus units, and I just want to offer a little bit of perspective on why council went with cash, because at the time, we didn't have the authority to do anything except take cash or take time-limited units. And council looked at that and said, you know what? we're better to take the cash than structure a bureaucracy to manage a bunch of units that would be limited in number and that would be time limited. So we took money that would go into nonprofits that are doing housing forever. It was kind of a pragmatic choice. Canada Lands on this. It's great to hear the 20% commitment, but really, we're kind of looking at the wrong people in some ways. Canada Lands will do as good on affordable housing as they're supported to allow them to do. Right. And that's true of any developer. Like the cost of construction, the cost of all these things is going through the roof. Like that CMHC program, about 20% less the rent in an area, and then you get this rent that's totally unaffordable. That program has rightfully been maligned, but also for some of the wrong reasons. It was really meant to spark the construction of apartments in markets that were building all condos, Vancouver, Toronto. In our marketplace, it kind of doesn't make any sense at all in the way it's being applied because we have a strong apartment sector. All our buildings are apartments. We don't have a condo market. So, and there's the talk about nonprofits and co-ops. They're great. They can help. And, the city, we can collect a little bit of money and provide grants to that, but they can't pick up the whole weight of this crisis. It's impossible for that. Mia referenced, who pays. So the biggest issue in this whole situation is that question. Well, who pays? So if you're requiring 20% of the units to be affordable, that's great. But that means the other 80% are paying for that. And the higher you push that percentage, the higher you're pushing the rents in the other ones because they have to make up the difference. And that's well and good to a point, but there's a point where that breaks. The only way to fix that is taxpayer money. I don't live in Shannon Park, right? I have a house on Tulip Street. I should be paying, from my taxes to help create affordable units there. We all should. It's a collective societal responsibility. And we once thought that way. That was how we did housing, right? That was metro housing. And we stopped doing that basically 30, 40 years ago. And the roots of so much of our current crisis come from that moment. And the path out of that current crisis is only going to be with the province, whether or not they're going to build and operate. There's a bunch of different ways they can do it. But the only way out is going to be if we have the federal and provincial governments, because they have the pockets and they've got the jurisdiction. The only way out is if they come to the table in a significant way. And that means they need to be directly involved in Shannon Park, working on that development to create those units in the space, rather than just expecting in that the developer and the non-affordable units in there to carry the whole societal freight of that crisis that we're in. We all need to be contributing, and the way to do that is how we do collective stuff. It's through government. It's through the collective governing of society. So that is my rant for the evening. It's a good development, but there is so much work to be done on the affordable housing piece. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like we just got a good little lesson there. Thank you, Councillor Austin. That was very good. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I too will be supporting the application before us today. This agreement and stuff. It's a long time coming, as stated earlier. This is one of those properties, the woulda, coulda, shoulda situations. I was there for the debates about the Commonwealth Games and stuff, and what could have been there. Was a pipe dream at the time, and now we got even bigger dreams before us now with an alternative plan. My only concern, though, is they talk about affordability and accessibility. I think that Mr. Acker got a point about aging in place. These places got to be adaptive housing. It got to be built for people to age in place over time, and I think that's important to do that in the very beginning of the construction process. I'm glad to see the parkland dedication meets the threshold of 10% in the area, and I think that the parkland sites are critical for this property to develop as it is. The Harbour front property, I think it's going to be very good to have commemoration, especially for the Halifax explosion and the First Nation Turtle Grove history. I think it's important to have that hopefully incorporated into the plan. I'm concerned about the school property. As the population gets built up, will the school continue to have capacity or not? Or they're going to have to build on it and expand on it, or they might have to change the school boundaries and stuff and put in a school elsewhere else to take the burden off this particular school. I would have to make comment of being on the Bridge Commission. I'm glad there's been accommodations made for the crossing of a new bridge, I guess you could say, on the north end. a replacement bridge. Well, anyway, it's one at the north end. We talked about different options, and it looks like the option that the Bridge Commission is going with is a corridor to the south side of the bridge, which will impact, I guess, a bit of the property here, but it also enhance some of the view planes, I guess, for some of the properties looking over the bridge. So it'd be quite a unique opportunity to see that once both infrastructure assets get built. And as it stands now, I'm looking forward to this. I just can't wait to see it started. It's been a long time coming. Be a long time to get it done, but at least get a step in the right direction is tonight. Thank you.
All right, shall we call for the question? Excellent. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And that motion has passed. Excellent. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming for that public hearing, everyone. And do we need a little break to continue on, or are we good to go? Are we good to go? Let's keep her going. All right. Drive carefully to those who are leaving, and we're going to continue. We'll give them 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
I'm just like looking for it. Just looking for some minus. I mean, now I'm not there. Is that who you were texting? Now it's basically this one.
Do you know where the recycling place is? Okay, yeah.
All right, we are going to resume. So that takes us to correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Madam Clerk, do we have any correspondence?
Yes, Chair Purdy. Correspondence was received and circulated for items 10.1.2 and 10.2.1.
Excellent. And have we received any petitions?
The clerk's office has not received a petition.
Council, any petitions?
I acknowledge the one with an online petition with over 8,000 signatures, so I don't think we're going to reproduce that. So.
Okay, excellent. Presentations, we have none. Information items brought forward, none. And this brings us to our reports. Item 13.1.1, case 23032, land use bylaw amendment for 538 Pleasant Street, Dartmouth. Yes, Councillor Austin's going to read the motion.
So I move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council adopt the amendments to the land use bylaw for Dartmouth as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated January 19th, 2023.
Seconded.
That's what's on the
It's right
agenda.
there, 13.1.1.
Oh, yes, right, sorry.
It's okay.
So this, as I understand it, is this is not really a choice. This is the UARB has kicked it back to us and told us you must do this. And so not really anything much to say about that other than we got overruled.
So did we vote on this?
This is the cement plat. Yeah.
Councillor Hensby seconded.
I second it.
Okay.
Just for clarification from a legal person here, why is
Legal
this even
person.
before us? You know, if the URB has made a decision, the decision's made, or do we have to, why we have to go back and amend or make this motion to ratify it or justify it or to clarify it?
Council, they've essentially ordered us to do it, so, yeah.
Okay.
All right, then. Shall we call for the question?
If I may, Madam
Oh,
Chair?
of course, yes.
Just to clarify for those who are wondering, this is where there was a proposed cement plant that was being asked for. We had a public hearing, we had a vote, the vote was tied, and then that meant the application was denied. The applicant who wanted to build a cement plant then appealed to the URAB, and the URAB agreed with them. And that's, they're just telling us now that we have to read it, and that's what it's all about. So just clarifying for those that you might be wondering what this really means. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mancini. Call for the question?
What happens if we say no?
It is 538 Pleasant Street, Dartmouth.
Down on Woodside.
Woodside. Yeah.
That's a good question for Josh.
Yes.
What if we voted
no? They would probably, it would be essentially contempt of court, and we'd probably pay costs. So it costs us money, essentially. Yeah.
Play nice. Play nice, Councillor Austin. All in favor? All right, motion passed. That takes us to 13.1.2. You want to?
Yes, on your behalf there, Madam
Thank
Chair,
you
I'll
very
move a
much.
motion that the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council give notice, a motion to consider the proposed development agreement as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated January 18th, 2023, to permit a multiple unit dwelling and schedule public hearing.
Yeah. Excellent. And this is the development agreement for 1200 and 1216 Cole Harbour Road in Cole Harbour. Excellent. Yeah, so this is needed development in Cole Harbour right along the main strip. Haven't received any negative feedback at all. It's a project that is.
We'll see what the public hearing says.
We'll see what the public hearing says, but so far so good. It's looking good so far.
Yeah.
Yes, question. Call for the question. All in favor, say
Aye.
Aye. And that motion has passed. So members of Community Council, any? Nope. Motions?
Nope.
None. In camera. Colleagues, are we going in camera to discuss 15.1?
Just check what it is again. Hold on here.
It's
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, it was just
no
legal.
need? So do we need to ratify
No,
that motion?
that's just a supplementary report.
Okay, can somebody read the ratified motion?
I can do that, or.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, that the legal matter, a motion pertaining to litigation or potential litigation in regards to an identifiable person or person information, blah, blah, blah. That the motion of the Halifax, the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council adopt the recommendations outlined in the private confidential report dated December 14th, 2022, and direct that the private confidential report dated December 14th, 2022 be maintained private confidential.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Do we have any added items?
No,
Notices of motion?
no.
Public participation. Would anyone like to speak for
Hey.
public participation?
Floor's open.
Second time.
Come on, Mr.
Anyone
Acker.
in the gallery like to speak? Third and final. Anyone would like to speak? You are welcome.
Come on, Aaron.
Nope. All right. That is a no. Date of our next meeting is going to be March 2nd. And call for adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Hey, guys, thank you.